Australia was never supposed to matter in the car world. No vast export empires, no global design studios shaping the future of mobility. Just distance, heat, isolation. And yet, against every economic rule, Australia didn't just build cars, it built its own version of them. Cars that sounded American, moved like Europeans, and survived conditions that would destroy both. What makes this story uncomfortable in that Australia failed? It's that it succeeded, and still disappeared. At its peak, Australia produced nearly every component domestically: engines, gearboxes, panels, suspension, entire supply chains built from scratch. To local brands controlled almost half the national market. Workers didn't just assemble cars, they believed in them. And today, there isn't a single car assembly line left running. To understand how that happened, you don't start with factories, you start with fear. Long before the industry existed, Australia was a continent that punished machines. Roads were suggestions, not guarantees. Heat destroyed tolerances, dust entered everything. Distance demanded endurance. Any car that couldn't survive alone simply didn't survive at all. The earliest Australian automobiles weren't ambitious, they were cautious, built high off the ground. Mechanically simple, slow, but dependable. Every decision favored reliability over elegance. If a car started every morning and didn't overheat by noon, it was considered successful. That philosophy never left. When governments realized that imported cars would never truly adapt, they made a decision that would shape everything that followed. They didn't ban foreign brands, they forced them to commit. Build locally or pay the price. Tariffs weren't meant to protect pride. They were meant to create knowledge. Foreign companies complied. They built plants, trained workers, shared techniques. But something unexpected happened along the way. Australia learned too well. By the time Holden emerged as a national symbol, it wasn't copying America, it was translating it. The first truly Australian-designed car wasn't glamorous. It didn't chase speed, it chased survival. Raised suspension, strong chassis, modest power tuned for distance, not drama. And the country embraced it completely. For a generation, buying Australian wasn't a preference. It was a statement of belonging. Holden wasn't just a manufacturer. It was proof that Australia could stand on its own, that dominance bred confidence. Confidence attracted competition. When Ford arrived, it didn't bring American cars. It brought American ideas and reshaped them. What was small overseas became large locally. What was light became reinforced. Engines were retuned, bodies stiffened. The Falcon that emerged wasn't an import. It was an Australian species, and something remarkable happened. Australians didn't choose between brands, they chose sides. The rivalry became cultural, blue versus red. Not just in showrooms, but in families, workplaces, and racetracks. The Bathurst 1000 wasn't motorsport. It was identity in motion. Victory on that mountain meant validation everywhere else. Chrysler entered as the outsider, louder, bolder, less refined, more aggressive. Its designs leaned into attitude rather than balance. Where Holden felt familiar and Ford felt engineered, Chrysler felt rebellious. For a brief moment, Australia had something rare. 3 domestic manufacturers, distinct identities, global-level performance, local loyalty strong enough to sustain it. Then everything accelerated too fast. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, performance became obsession. Cars grew more powerful, not because customers demanded it, but because competition required it. Each new model existed to beat the last. Engines grew, chassis stiffened, speeds climbed, and fear followed. The idea that ordinary drivers could buy race-capable machines unsettled regulators and media alike. The supercar scare didn't kill the industry overnight, but it broke its momentum. Projects were canceled, ambition retreated. The industry learned its first hard lesson: power could be taken away. What followed wasn't decline, it was transformation. Speed gave way to comfort, Aggression softened into presence. Australian cars became long, smooth, quiet. Luxury wasn't about technology, it was about space and isolation. Thick seats, heavy doors, vinyl roofs. Cars designed not to attack roads, but to float over them. These vehicles weren't mistakes, they matched their moment. But the world outside Australia was changing faster than Australia itself realized. Fuel prices rose. Japanese manufacturers arrived quietly, offering something unfamiliar: consistency, efficiency, predictability. No racing heritage, no emotional narratives, just cars that worked every day and cost less to own. While Australia debated identity, others optimized scale. The government tried to intervene, rationalize, consolidate, simplify. On paper, it made sense. Fewer models, shared platforms, reduced costs. But what disappeared wasn't inefficiency, it was meaning. Badge engineering told customers something they never wanted to hear: that loyalty no longer mattered, that identity was interchangeable. Trust, once lost, never returned. By the 1990s, Australian cars still sold well. Factories still ran, workers still showed up. But the foundation had shifted. Australia was too small to compete globally, too expensive to remain isolated, too specialized to export widely. When tariffs fell, reality arrived all at once. Imports didn't win because they were better. They won because they were everywhere. By the time closures began, the numbers no longer mattered. Sales records couldn't save an industry misaligned with the global system it now depended on. Ford left first, then Holden, then Toyota. Each closure felt temporary, each was final. What vanished wasn't just production. It was continuity, skills passed down generations. The sound of shift starting, the belief that what Australians drove reflected who they were. There was no explosion, no collapse, just silence. Australia didn't lose its car industry because of one bad decision. It lost it because of many reasonable ones that added up to something irreversible. And that's the hardest truth. If you grew up hearing those engines, if you remember choosing sides, if the badge on the grill once meant something personal, then this story isn't about cars. It's about what happens when identity collides with economics. Subscribe if you believe these stories deserve to survive. And tell me in the comments, what Australian car still lives in your memory? Because once the machines are gone, only the stories remain.